Love me tender, love me sweet, never
Toby,
let
mute yourself.
me go. You have made my life complete,
In
and
Zoom.
I love you so. Love me tender, love me true.
We can like many, but we can love only a precious few. Because it is for those precious few that you have to be willing to do so very much. But you don't have to do it alone. Lincoln Financial helps you provide for and protect the financial future of those you care about most. Because this is what you do for people you love. Talk to an advisor. Lincoln Financial. You're in charge.
Hello. Hello, my name is Frank D'Onofrio, and I'm with NRN Plus, and welcome to the NRN Plus Virtual Town Hall. I'm your moderator this evening. My name is Frank D'Onofrio. I'm coming to you live from Maryland with the Republican candidate for Maryland District 2, Tim Fazenbaker. Tim is running for the district that has been run by a Democrat for, I don't know, over 40 years, a district that has been led by Doug Rupersberger. Tim, I believe your name for him is Out of Touch Dutch. Dutch has been running that district, I think, longer than Tim has been alive at this particular point in time. And at this moment, I'd like to introduce you to the candidate and probably a really great Republican, a really great American, Tim Fazenbaker. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. And yes, we call him Out of Touch Dutch for many reasons. He is not in touch with the people here in this district. And yes, he's been in office, a public office, 2 months longer than I've been alive. And I'm 42 years old.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, Tim, I've been following you since you started. We had breakfast early on when you just decided to run. And I was impressed with you back then. I'm still impressed with you now. I'm impressed with the type of person that you are and what you stand for. And I'd like you at this particular point in time to give you, a couple of minutes to, tell people about your campaign, who you are, what you do, and then we'll go into some questions. Why don't you do that?
Thank you. And thank you for the nice words there, Frank. Yeah, Tim Fazenbaker. I am from the heart of District 2, the Dundalk, Essex area, if you are familiar with the area. And our district has been gerrymandered so that the Democrats control this. So this district covers parts of 4 counties and Baltimore City. I am a family man here with 5 children, military family, and I'm a musician. I, like Frank, play guitar and sing, and I loved it. And a few years ago, I stopped playing out all the time because I was spending more time with my children. So my eyes got really open to what was going on by both Democrats and Republicans. Things were not going the way that I wanted to see them going for my children. So I decided to step up, and I got involved in local politics, and it took off. And I think part of it is my background is I'm an executive in mental health care. So I understand that a lot of people, we go about trying to express our views in a certain way, and it doesn't always translate. So I've done it a little differently, and we've had a ton of success. Our seat has been marked as one of the 19 that will flip the House, and this is going to be a landmark race this year here. So we are extremely excited. The pressure's on, and we are going to take back this seat and give it back to the people in District 2.
Tim, one of the things early on that you espoused was President Trump's America's First.
Yes.
moniker, but you take it a little bit further. You talk about Americans first. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, the premise was really, well, a lot of times the Republicans would say, no to illegal immigration. And we became the party of no in the 90s when I was growing up, watching it with under the Clintons. They were good at branding Republicans that way. Well, I knew that what we needed to do was tap into the emotional side as well and not be on the defensive, but actually go on the offense. And that means putting Americans first. So Donald Trump led with what a lot of us were already thinking, which was America first. Well, I wanted to make sure that it was the Americans that were getting the results of America first. And it was American kids, it was American veterans, American elderly and disabled. And so many times I would see the people in our districts, these Americans that were not getting the resources that were designed for them, and they were going other places. So we created the message really to coming out of what everybody said, to make sure the Americans are coming first, to have a message about unity, which was, it doesn't matter what race or background you're from, we're all Americans first and foremost. And that has been a driving message that is resonating within this community and across the country right now. That's why a lot of Republicans and people who are following this will win this year, and we will take back that house.
One of the things that's very interesting, my career has been in IT for the last 40 years. And I call it a birthright. Okay. We were told, I'm a little bit older than you, Tim, but, I'm the end of the baby boom era. But, my group was told that, that there were certain birthrights, certain things that you had, that you were entitled to as an American. Okay. That you're entitled to a job. Okay, that if you worked hard and you worked that job, that job would be there for you forever. And somewhere in the 1990s, as the Democrats took over and you had the NAFTA, something shifted. Okay, businesses went to China, businesses went to India, and then all of a sudden, the same plant that was in California would open itself to Mexico right over the border, and they'd fire every American working there, even though their parents and they worked there. And all of a sudden, foreigners are getting your jobs. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I remember NAFTA in the 90s, and I was a kid and teenager and didn't really understand at the time, but I was fairly politically astute back then. And we saw the effects of what it was. It was globalism. It was a way to combat Americans' greatness and to bring America down a peg. And that's not what this country was founded on.
No.
People have the God-given right to do whatever you want with your life as long as you don't take away that right from another. And in America, we live by that. And when these other forces, especially for many people who weren't around when the Cold War was there, when the Soviet Union fell, a lot of these anti-Americans and communists joined other movements like the globalist movement, NAFTA type things, where they could actually chip away at the American culture. It was all by design, and it was ultimately some people getting rich and the American person getting screwed. So I always say we have a lesser quality of life for a higher price tag, and that had to change. And it took a couple decades, but we're seeing now the tide switching because Americans are saying we've had enough and we want back what is ours. We paid into it. Our parents paid into it. We want what is ours, and we want to make a better life for our kids.
Before I get into the questions, I'm just gonna focus on one last thing, and that's the something that's near and dear to my heart at this particular point in time. I was unemployed last year for over a year. Okay, and one of the things that I noticed was something called H-1B visas. Okay, and that's another way. So with NAFTA, they sold us on the fact that, well, if we enact NAFTA, right, that's good for our country, right? We're going to bring jobs to America. Well, the jobs didn't come into America; they went out of America. Mm-hmm. And now they said, well, we dumbed down the education system. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. And then when we dumbed down the education system, then we started importing labor, okay, from India and China. We started bringing them here to do jobs that Americans should be doing if we would teach them what they need to learn. So I'd like you to touch a little bit about, one, because I know you have children, education, and two, about taking our jobs, because last time I looked, we created the IT world.
Yeah. So some people know that I have someone on my team that was working for candidate Trump in 2016, who's also in the IT field, and one of his main concerns is always about these H-1B visas, and we spoke about it in length. And I think the premise should always be that Americans do these jobs and fulfill these with Americans as much as possible. And then we supplement with other skilled laborers from around the world when need be. What's happened, and you hit on it, a lot of times Americans are being bypassed on purpose, and they're being dumbed down in the education system. And it's probably by design and from a lack of ability from the educators, not teachers, but the federal education system that implements a lot of these things. I do have a lot of teachers that work on my campaign as well. Mm-hmm. And what happens is we were sold a bill of goods by saying everybody's got to go to college. I went to college, but I've got great friends that didn't go to college, and they became master electricians and master HVAC people, and they make great money. These are the types of things that we need to be pushing trade school, because
yes,
we have so many areas that can be filled with Americans. And Americans are great. We're smart people. We're very energetic and hardworking. We can do these jobs, and we've done them better than most of the people in the world. That's why we need to make sure we continue preparing people for their adult life and their working career. But it all starts with education. And we've seen a decline in education for many generations now, because ultimately the government gets involved, and just like everything, it goes downhill. We need to teach our children how to think critically instead of teaching them to the book, the way a lot of the indoctrination occurs right now in our school system.
Yeah, unfortunately, and it's sad because you say, oh, okay, what do I have to study for the test?
Yes.
I was never that way, and unfortunately, though, there are people that do that. I've got some questions that were sent in. And I really would love to. And these are people, by the way, we're coming at you live. Okay. So if you want to, if you go to nrn.socialmonials.com/Fazenbaker-text-questions, you can ask your questions. So this comes from Noah Greenberg. And Noah asked, Tim, what would you do to protect businesses here in the district if we suffer more of these government lockdowns, when people like Pelosi make sure big businesses are taken care of, as well as colleges, but small businesses are left to lie in the dust? Small business is what keeps neighborhoods going.
Yeah.
The Dems in Congress are doing everything to erase our business. They want to put all of our savings into keeping it running. Please talk to me about that question.
Yeah, and obviously this is probably the hottest topic in this nation right now, with the lockdowns. And here in Maryland, we've had a some will say an egregious lockdown or stay-at-home order going on. First and foremost, we always need to go off of the Constitution. And a lot of people, and I have to address this first, a lot of people don't care about the Constitution, but what wisdom is an awesome virtue, because these men and ladies back then were wise enough to see what goes on with humans and mankind, and they realized the tyranny and the evil that can come out of men. So they put down these laws to protect us. So there's a reason why they're there. We might not agree with certain things, but right now they're in there, and that's what we have to base everything off of. So first of all, we follow the Constitution, yet we need to be prepared for the safety of others and things like that. There can be a compromise, but people are upset when you see that you can go into a Walmart, but you can't go into a Joe Schmo local business and get the same type of stuff. And then you can have, I have 4 little kids in my house plus my wife. There's 6 of us. There could be 6 people in my house, but now if I go out on a boat, I can only have 2 people. I got to leave 4 people at home. Things don't make sense. The reason why is because the government always has to have a way and get their hands in things. They don't want to let go of power. Power is almost like an aphrodisiac for a lot of people. So we have to find a way to always honor the Constitution first and foremost, and then protect the rights and the safety of people, as well. The way that this state and many other states are doing it is completely wrong. And I encourage people to look at a map. Most of the issues are happening in more liberal run states compared to the red states. And what was really happening is the taxpayers, and mainly, especially in these red states, are funding these blue states with all this federal stimulus money going into these places. And the governors, they love it because they're getting basically what they would consider free money coming in for their pet projects. And then we have issues like with unemployment here in Maryland. People have been filing for unemployment for 8 weeks and haven't received a penny. And what's going on is the states are getting these monies, and they're not really getting them out. They're going to keep a lot of what's left over, and they're going to use it for their pet projects. So we have to find a way. There are ways to do that. If we get into specific questions, I'll kind of talk on that. But they're Constitution first, and then the safety of everybody as well.
We'll talk about 2 things here. First of all, one was that one of the things that's really important to understand to everybody is that the Constitution was written as the people give the rights to the government.
Yes.
The government lost that. The government has lost that concept. They believe, the Democrats actually believe, that they give us the rights, and they don't. The Constitution is written to provide rights to the government. It's the only document in history, okay, that the rights come from the people, not the people come from the government. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know if you know this, but my son and my daughter-in-law are both workers that are essential workers. My granddaughter goes to daycare. The governor is supposed to pay the daycare centers, okay, and guess what? They haven't gotten a check yet.
Yep.
Okay, so it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Let's go down to the next question. This comes from Josh Strachan. Okay, Tim, what are your thoughts on trans athletes competing alongside regular gender athletes in competition in high school and college sports? Should there be federal legislation on that?
Yeah, so I always say, first and foremost, with any law or legislation, the concept has to be thought of first. Is this: you have the right, the God-given right, to do what you want with your life, as long as you don't take away that right from another. Now, when you have trans athletes competing against, say, a man becoming a woman, and now they're competing against biological women, there is a disadvantage. Whether it always occurs doesn't matter. There's generally a disadvantage, and we see it because there's so many stories now about men who became women are winning these contests against women, and who's suffering? The women in these sports. I think it was Title 9 or Title 19. I'm sorry, I've drawn a blank for a second. That was created so that women could have their own sports and be funded. And now it's becoming a mockery. So you know what? If trans people want to have their own division, well, let them have their own division. But don't go into a division where where women who are generally in a different physical capability system, that they're gonna have challenges versus going against these trans people. And I always say, you don't see the woman who's transitioning to a man generally dominating the men in the sports. It's always the one way around. I have two little daughters, 3 daughters total, and I want what's right for my daughters and my men and my sons. It's not fair. And the liberal mindset is always about fairness. Well, how is it fair to these ladies and young women that are striving to get college scholarships or anything along those lines? There can be other ways. I think first and foremost is we protect the rights of these young women and women in general before we do anything special rights for anybody else. We must protect the individual rights of everybody before we get into these special rights.
I agree. Tim, it's my feeling that we have a lot of these rights to protect those who can't protect themselves. Okay, and that's an important part and thing to look at, because young women. It happened in, I believe, Pennsylvania, where a judge said that a transgender individual can dress in the same locker room as teenage girls. Now, I'm sorry, I just, I don't agree with that. And the bottom line is that if you've raised girls, I've raised girls, girls at that age are extremely conscious of their bodies. Okay. And they don't want to be seen. And I know some girls that don't even want to go in a locker room, period. Okay. And to have a transgender in the locker room just is not, in my mind, acceptable. Okay. And you don't have enough spots to have private lockers, showers everywhere. So it's just difficult.
That's right.
I have a following question. This is from Zalika Bazemore. Zalika's running for mayor for the city of Baltimore. And Zalika says, Tim, what funding bills will you legislate to support Baltimore City small businesses expansion in the West Baltimore communities? How will you provide the mayor of Baltimore City with support for massive revitalization and new needed development? Will you help the mayor of Baltimore City succeed in obtaining at least $2.5 billion of the $10 billion that have been set aside for revitalization in the most deprived cities, declared cities, Baltimore City being one mentioned by President Trump?
Yeah.
I love that question.
Yes. So Zalika Bazemore is a great person. If she becomes mayor of Baltimore, watch out, because things are really going to get better.
Yes.
So, and I would love to work alongside someone like Zalika. Zalika and I have had some conversations, and we agree. It's, Baltimore has been a very cultural city. We have a street that, you have Germantown and Little Italy and Greektown, and it's been pride. The pride in Baltimore was always around that we had our uniqueness, but we were one. We were Baltimore, right? And it's that American first mentality, and it's not there anymore. And it's been eroded, and we've seen Baltimore now in the news for all the wrong reasons, and it hurts us Baltimoreans to see that. We want to do the right thing for Baltimore. So the liberal mindset, the socialists have had Baltimore for 70 years, and it's just been eroding, and it's almost a laughing stock of the city. I hate to say it. I mean, of the country. Yes. So plans that I've had for Baltimore is really, we've lost our infrastructure, we've lost our education, and it was kind of what we were talking about earlier. What we need to do first is fix the education system. Now, Baltimore, I believe, is the third highest funded system in the entire nation, and the results are terrible. It's not the money; it's the way that we're teaching children, and it has to change. There has to be we got to push to have intact families as much as possible. And it can work with different families, but when you push that there's the traditional family is no good, then you get a lot more issues that are going on in inner city and suburbs. So we have to teach it. We have to teach critical thinking, responsibility, hard work, and then you have a great workforce when you have that. And then what happens? People want to come into your city and put a big plant and put a big industry. And we see it happen all the time now, where the high-tech industry and a lot of big pharma type stuff happens outside of Baltimore down towards DC, but they don't come to Baltimore. It's because they don't trust a couple of things. They don't think it's safe. They don't think there's a strong enough workforce. Whether they're right or wrong, that's what happens. And it's happening in other parts around Baltimore where it's following that same path. So what we need to do is invest into properly educating our children, having a strong workforce, and then we can bring in these types of businesses. I'm willing to work with any type of legislation or bill to help get these businesses in here, but I will not go for corporate welfare, which we do see a lot of times disguised as capitalism, which it's not. And it happens here with all kinds of governments saying, hey, come in, we'll get a tax base, and they're usually lower paying jobs. So with Zuleika, yes, or whomever will be mayor, hopefully it'll be Zuleika. That is a major focus of mine. It's, I have parts of Baltimore in this district, but most of the district feels like they're Baltimore. It's very close.
I
And
agree.
great question.
Yeah, and you know what? And here's the point: we have some of the greatest universities in our backyard. Okay, and I really believe that if the universities were brought in, okay, to the equation and said, listen, okay, let's have some of your brightest minds work with our teachers and figure this out. We could make Baltimore, I'm only 30 minutes from downtown Baltimore. We could make Baltimore the shining city on the hill that it once was.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the ethnic, listen, I grew up Italian American, okay? Bottom line, Italian American, okay? And but I was Italian American, okay? The American never left me, okay? I never thought of myself as Italian. I'll tell you, I go out to Italy, I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm an American, okay? And the bottom line is that most, my Greek friends say the same thing, my Irish friends say the same thing, and all of those little areas were areas that people of the same culture congregated and built Baltimore, okay? They built Baltimore. I mean, and it was once one of the most thriving centers in the world. And it was great. I have one more question before we're going to run your ad. This comes from Morty Madelbaum. And Tim, what are some ways that you would fight anti-Semitism in Baltimore?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Morty.
It's a big question.
Yeah. So also, as we're talking about the cultures of Baltimore, we have a very large Jewish population here. And I speak to like other Jews from outside of the district, and they experience life and anti-Semitism differently. When I say it's a little more harmonious here in Baltimore, it is, because we grow up, and just like you were saying, you're Italian, you're Italian or you're Jewish, we were all one.
Yeah.
So we knew the holidays. We might not have completely said them correctly, or we might not have really appreciated it. But we're like, hey, we're all school for a Jewish holiday, and if you weren't Jewish, you were like, I don't care, I'm off. So we had a respect for each other. And yeah, anti-Semitism still happens here. And what I think we need to do is we need to understand that America was founded really on Judeo-Christian principles. And that really translates into you have the right to do what you want, just don't take away the right from another. But when you have other things coming in and anti-American views and communist views and they're talking about Sharia law or anti-America this, anti-Israel that, you really gem up that vitriol for the Jewish community and for Israel and America. And hey, you know what? The Jewish community has to be protected. They're our ally in the Middle East, one of our best allies in the world. And, we always put America first, but when you see a lot of Jewish people, they'll put the American flag and they put, the Israeli flag as well. And a lot of them have dual citizenship. They have ties to both. And they're a unique culture, and we need to protect them, and we need to make sure we have people like AOC and Out of Touch Dutch Ruppersberger who supports CARE. Those people, they just need to be not in office, because their vitriol and their support of anti-Israel and anti-American ways are a thing of the past, and they have to be, or else we're going to see terrible atrocities happen again.
Okay. Hey, Tim, we're going to run your ad. I think it's a great ad. And this is for everybody else out there, and we're going to run it.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Fazenbaker, born and raised right here in the heart of the 2nd District. I grew up in a blue-collar town, Dundalk, where many residents worked at companies like Bethlehem Steel and General Motors. When those companies left, public officials neglected our area. When I was a touring musician, I saw how many other cities were thriving. My parents pushed for a better life for me. I graduated from Towson University. At an early age, I became an executive in the mental health field. Now, I'm married with 5 children. They are my everything. Now, my focus is to make a better life for all of our kids. I'm ready to fight for all of us. We've seen much of our district battling high crime, high taxes, drug addiction, homelessness, and a lack of high-paying jobs. We are facing a lower quality of life for a higher price tag. That's why I'm running for Congress. My plan is to put our kids first. Together, we can stop this corruption, provide safer neighborhoods, and a 21st century education, giving our children the resources needed to be successful in life. Let's stand together for the future of America. I'm Tim Fazenbaker, and I approve this message.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tim, your ad just sent. I'm here on NRN Plus Virtual Town Hall, and my guest tonight is Tim Fazenbaker. And Tim, well, it seems that we're doing something good because the questions keep coming in, so I'm going to go right to them. I'm done with my questions for a while. This is from Tabitha Little. Tim, please help me figure out how I can work a job paid for by a grant, but my hours and pay were cut, and no one can explain where the rest of the money is going, nor can I collect unemployment or the CARE Act to help supplement to take care of my children who I now have to teach, and bills that have increased because we have 5 computers running at once. I'm at my wit's end.
Yeah, I first of all, I'm sorry. I feel what's going on for you. I think it's Tamara or Tamara. Tabitha. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people have come to me. You know, I'm not in office, but a lot of people come to me because they know that I try to do whatever I can, you know, just as a normal citizen, just with a little bit larger microphone at this time. And I try to help people. And like I said, I have 4 little kids. So yeah, my wife is working from home, and then there's 4 little computers going on with my children as well. 5, so there's 5 devices going on. We're trying to teach kids and stuff. So what's going on right now is a real fundamental change in America, and it's awful. People have lost jobs. They can't get unemployment, or if they do get unemployment, they're not getting the money, and they're just there's no resources for these people, and they're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. I can't pay my bills. I'm running out of food. I'm not getting, you know, some kind of relief. You know, even from the CARE Act, I'm not getting reliefs. I can't go buy food. So people have been turning to food shelters and churches and you know, places of worship that will help. And it's unfortunate that like Tabitha is in a situation like that. And what I ask right now is, you know, the government is so meddled with bureaucracy that, you know, people like Tabitha aren't getting the resources they need. But every American out there, help somehow. You know, donate. Ask your neighbors if they need help, because there's a lot of people, and there's pride involved, and there's people that just don't have the ability. Ask them, you know, hey, can I cut your grass for you? Do you need help? Can I help you with food? You know, and one thing my parents taught me, and my family was raised by my Italian godfather who was born in 1899, and you know, he would just bring bags of groceries without even asking to family when he knew that they were having trouble. So I'm sorry, you know, people are going through these things, and government is usually the problem. And I think we're seeing that right now. But as Americans and individuals, let's help these people. You know, if you see somebody out there, do what you can to help, while people like myself and others are trying to fix the wrongs that are in this government.
Right. I really appreciate that. This comes from another great up and coming rising star in Baltimore politics. This comes from Giovanni Patterson. Okay. Tim, parts of Baltimore City are in your district. Right now is the perfect opportunity to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. What plans do you have to bring those jobs to Baltimore and the surrounding area?
Yeah, I have to say, Giovanni is a great person. I believe he's running for city council. So I'm plugging him here too as well. City council president. I've talked to Giovanni a couple of times, and he's got very similar ideas, which is, you know what? We have it's almost a Baltimore first type mentality. Let's do what we need to do to fix right here, because that's a play off of America First. Baltimore in the past was always a thriving city because we have things that other places don't have. We have Chesapeake Bay. We have the ocean. We have the mountains. We have agriculture. We have horse country up north. Many of the prize winning horses come from here. This is a beautiful area, and we have so many great resources. You know, we even have oil. but we don't. That's a whole nother situation, you know. So, you know, you have the Inner Harbor, and it's going into Baltimore, and you have you. We should be, you know, places should be overbidding to come and put their factories here, but they're not. And what we're doing is corporate welfare and giving money away to people to have their little business or their companies come in and have low paying jobs. Yeah, they are jobs, but they're not what they used to be here. We used to have Bethlehem Steel, which was the biggest steel plant in the world. And we basically were the force behind much of World War II's, you know, infrastructure. It's all gone. Went to China, went somewhere else. So what we need to do is we need to make sure, like I said, we got to you fix the education that's going on in the city, but we really need to leverage our resources and bring in with different target packages in a sense to say, hey, you know, let's entice a business to come in here the right way, not by just saying, hey, you know, we're going to give you everything. Come in here, do a public-private sector partnership, you know, to get it off the ground, but really focus these businesses to work around the harbor, around Baltimore, have these people in the city that really need jobs, that can't get jobs, that are strong and productive type individuals. They can get in there and do this stuff. We can train them, invest in the city, and the city will pay for it by the production that they do. But they won't bring them in here anymore because, like I said, 70 years of far left rule has destroyed the city. And I ask everybody, you know, even if you don't agree with many of the things that I talk about, have you had enough? It's been 70 years of one way rule, and it's been getting worse. It's time that we try a different path.
Well, you know, person running in District 7, Kim Classic, said something very interesting in an interview I did with her a couple of weeks ago. She said, you know what? We've got kids out there, they call them the squeegee kids, right?
Yeah.
They're actually out there in the heat, in the sun, in the cold, and they're working. They're kind of scrape to get a dollar. Could you imagine if we had a program for those kids to get them educated and to use that entrepreneur? And honestly, I agree. It's an entrepreneur mentality. I'm not making any money. Let me go get it. Okay. Yeah. And, you know, I necessarily, you know, you sit there and go, listen, you know, it's a little weird, but I grew up in New York in the 80s, and they had the same thing. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So many people, well, let's say you know, like I said, you always have the right to do whatever you want in life, and we encouraged entrepreneurship to really get out there and do something. And a lot of the people will do these types of things because there is a lack of opportunity for some things. Now, many people don't want that kind of stuff going on the corners. There's safety issues, you know, there's other drug things and things like that. We get that. Best solution to even just avoid it, find a way for these people to be productive and in a more suitable structure where they can put their efforts to use and not make people uncomfortable, you know, by being on the corners and things like that. And I think what happens a lot of times is we had a mayor in Baltimore when I was a child called Mayor Schaefer, and he became governor of Maryland, Donald Schaefer. And he had the philosophy that, you know, we talked about the communities and cultures that they ran the city, but also we kept out people that were panhandling and doing these types of things from doing it because people became afraid. And it's not that you know, everyone who does it is wrong. It's just that no matter what, people do become afraid, and their issues do happen. So once Mayor Schaefer left, and I think it was Mayor DuBurns came in, and he started allowing these things to happen, that's when it's just started to take hold. So when you go into Baltimore now, there's panhandlers everywhere. You know, even in Baltimore County, there's that way. You know, and there's the squeegee kids and stuff. Let's find another outlet for these you know, young people to be productive. You know, so that they're paying into the tax system, and that they have a structure to move towards.
Yep. Okay, this is from Dennis Cash. Tim, I would like to know if you're going to be a bipartisan politician that'll work across party lines to help better the country. I would also like to see if you'd be willing to establish a panel of combat vets from Baltimore County to help the suicide rate go down.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, for that question. And I'm glad that came up. I'm very pro-veteran. I've been endorsed by Veterans for Trump, and I was very proud of that. I worked very hard on trying to restore Fort Howard Hospital, which was designed for veterans. And it's one of 2 hospitals now that are not going back to veterans. It's going to private use. The other happens to be in California. So, like I said, I'm part of a military family, and it's one of the major focuses of who I am. It's to make sure we take care of those who've taken care of us. So yes, I will do anything to make sure our veterans have exactly what they need. And I will fight to make sure that happens, and not just blow smoke like a lot of politicians do. I will fight for those who fight for us. Baltimore County we have a lot of veterans as well. And I'm in a historic area where I live. I'm in Sparrows Point, which is basically Fort Howard, has a lot of history with the Revolutionary War and War of 1812. So we really appreciate those there. The first part of that question about being bipartisan, I look at it like this. I'm a conservative individual. So when people ask me, what's your political stance? I'm conservative. And I will always say that. I've always said I'm an American, conservative, and then Republican, because the party doesn't matter to me. It does in the fact that most on the Democrat side are going extremely far left, and I want nothing to do with that. But instead of thinking about how to be bipartisan, think about how to lead. Make the left come to us. Lead by example. And I think whether you like President Trump or not, and I do, what you see a lot of times with President Trump is he leads in a populist movement, which is we're going to do this unifying thing for America. And then behind the scenes, he's doing a lot of conservative things, not everything, but he's doing a lot of conservative things, and he's leading by example. That is the type of way to get bipartisan support. However, when you have, let's just say, haters who will do anything to take down America, you can't work with them. Those people need not to be in office. You need to find ways to make sure that we move forward with the proper people in office and not have to kowtow to the far left that wants to destroy America.
Tim, your mental health background is very, very important, because a lot of the ills facing the veterans, facing our country, facing pretty much almost every aspect. And right now, I would like your honest opinion about the mental health effect of the shutdown, okay, on Americans, okay, and how important it is that we start getting back to work. So please, could you expound on that? Because I know that is your background.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because this is near and dear to me and to many Americans. They don't even think about the mental health aspect, but many people are struggling right now for different reasons. Middle-aged men are the second highest group of people that commit suicide. And that is generally because if they lose their job and they feel like they don't have a role, a responsibility, a protector, they end up feeling worthless and they kill themselves. What you're seeing right now is that's happening to men and women across the nation. And if you just look at the men, a lot of these men are going, I can't take care of my family. That is my role. That is my responsibility. How am I going to do this? And then you turn around and the government is just not being efficient. And that we know that happens with big government all the time, but we're seeing it in action now. A lot of these people become they feel that they become worthless, and then they take their lives. And then what happens? The remaining family struggles, and they struggle for the rest of their lives dealing with that. So it's ruining families. But then you have people like Tabitha, they can't get the resources there. They're struggling. They have increased stress. That is also the kick the dog displacement, which is in psychology, basically, that you're going to transfer your issues onto other people unknowingly, and then you feel remorse for that. So you're upset, you're stressed out, you take it out on the kids. Now the kids are upset. It's a snowball effect. What needs to happen is people need to have a vision of something to move towards in life, and a job does that. For most people, you have a path forward in life. So a lot of times when you see people and generations of people that are on, government assistance and subsidies, and they wake up every day and they go, I don't have anything to do. They can find trouble. They're looking for something to do. So these are issues that happen. And I ask people, think about the Soviet Union. They had a huge problem with alcoholism. And a lot of it came from there was no work. So when you don't have work and you don't have a path forward for these people, they turn to other things to fill the void. That's what needs to not happen here. We need to be able to have people feeling productive and getting outside, doing something and being social. Humans are social people. We can't just be sheltered in place. There's so much to this, but generally that's the mindset of what's going on in a lot of people around this country. And anxiety in children and anxiety in adults is increasing as well because we're unsure of what's going to happen. We need to find a better path than what the government is currently doing with this whole pandemic.
I agree with you. And the people that get hurt the most, Tim, are the children.
Yep.
Okay. Because, I had a very strong father. My father has never touched my mother or us. Okay. And, but there are other parents that do that, and they take their frustrations out on their children or their spouses. And now you're locked in a room with them for the last 2 months. Okay. And there's no, there's no outlet for you. There's no place to run. You can't even run because the governor locked us down. I think that's important that people understand that. And I wrote an article on New Right Network about 2 weeks ago about everybody, criticizing Dr. Phil, but Dr. Phil wasn't criticizing opening up and talking about opening up. He was talking about the mental health effect, okay, of having this lockdown, and that, it just can't go on. And now we're talking about the governor wanting to keep us shut for what, till July?
Yeah.
I mean,
and
trust me,
January in some instances.
and that our entire that there are entire businesses that if they're not open by Memorial Day out on the Eastern Shore, okay, they will never open again.
Yep.
Okay. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch this. And honestly, it's frustrating to watch our government, okay, taking safety and trading our liberty for safety. And I'd like you to talk about that.
Yeah, without getting too in the weeds, humans have their hierarchy needs, and some of you guys will have heard Maslow before talked about this. And safety, security is paramount in this paradigm of what people need. And I think what some of the evil people that really want control have learned was, well, let's tap into that. People will trade their freedoms for safety and security. And same thing with food. I mean, if you don't have food and you'll do whatever you can to get food for your family, and you'll trade away these types of things. And that's what I'm afraid we're seeing. People are giving away their rights because they're scared. And it's a mental health tactic to mess with people and say, hey, we're going to provide for you. We're going to keep you safe. Even if the results aren't there, the media has perpetuated this to say, hey, this is bigger than what, we got to be careful. Yes, it is an extreme issue, and it's taken lives of many people. And people, even at some of my events, I've known a couple of people that have caught this, but I think it's being used as a weapon to mess with people's mentality so that they can chip away at our rights in general, chip away at America. And, I ask people this a lot. If you think about, why does everybody always want to take down America? Now, America's done some things that are wrong, yes, but America was the first type of nation that really was built on this individual freedoms, and that the government was ruled by the people. And they don't want that, because mankind's mentality is we're going to control, and then there's going to be people that are subordinates. And that's why they want to chip away at it, because America has been such a strong force for good in the history of this world that they don't want that. They want what has always been, the kings and the tyrants. So I ask everybody, if you're scared, I understand. It's natural to be scared, but look at the grand plan and look at the grand scheme. Don't trade away your rights for security and freedom. For security and safety. There has to be a balance between this.
Tim, you and I both have friends and dear friends that are Jewish, the Jewish faith, and there's two questions here. One is one is a question about the the anti-Semitism, but the other is the question of you now can see, okay, why so many people just streamed onto trains, okay, in Nazi Germany, okay,
Yep.
and just got on the trains because they were told to.
Yeah.
The difference between, however, what people don't understand is the mentality of America versus the mentality of Nazi Germany, of German people. When you tell them what to do, they usually do what you tell them. Whereas I know a lot of Americans don't normally do what you tell them to do. Okay, they're always going, "Hey, no, what about that?" I always think about Captain Kirk in Star Trek going, "Excuse me," but that's a typical American ideal. And I think you need to talk about that too.
Yeah. So America was founded by many, many great cultures came into America and founded it. And it was that idea of America is free and individual. And at the same time, it was collective, but it was, you had rights first. And people were fleeing areas, like England, where you didn't have freedoms for religion and certain things, and other parts of the world, they were coming here for freedom. And we saw that even after during World War II, people were fleeing persecution and things like that, and they come here and they realize it's ingrained in America and Americans that you have the right to question authority and challenge, because authority is not always right. There's a lot of evil that happens with that. So it's great to be an American, because you have the mindset that I'm going to question what's going on, and I'm going to make sure that what's going on is right. But what happens many times, and there's been other psychological experiments where, somebody, they go along to get along, and they think they got to do the right thing, even if they know it's the wrong thing, and it just snowballs. And that is what happens in many. Nazi Germany did that. Many people, they knew it was wrong, but they did it anyway, because everybody else was doing it. You don't want to be the odd person out, and then you just kind of start going with it. That's what could happen here, and we've seen it with a lot of mayors. I think De Blasio up in New York even said, "Hey, tell on them, be the tattletale. I got 8 million people that will tell on you for doing the wrong thing." Growing up, we always heard, who did that? Communist Russia, Communist Soviet Union. Tell on other people, and then people would get killed and not be seen again. You did it in Nazi Germany and probably in fascist Italy. It's in the individual. It goes, okay, we are Americans, but what America first really means is you have to take care of yourself. If you can do that, you can take care of a family. Then you can take care of your neighbors, and your block, and your community, your city, your state, and your country, and then the world. But if you don't have a strong foundation of being able to take care of yourself first, nothing else happens. The opposite is communism. Only a few people run everything for everybody. And we always know how that turns out. Always for the worst.
George Orwell wrote in Animal Farm, everybody's equal, but some people are more equal than others. Okay. Yes. And, and I use an example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who our friend John Cummings is running against in New York. Okay. Yep. And, she's against charter schools. It's horrible. The most horrible thing in the world is charter schools. But her goddaughter needed to get into a charter school. She made sure her goddaughter got into that charter school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Many people don't know that Nancy Pelosi is from Baltimore, and her family were mayors and just politically active in Baltimore. And I'm glad you brought this up, because recently, within this past week, we have a school, the Institute of Notre Dame, which is in Little Italy, and it's been in existence, I believe, 180 years. And many of my friends have went there, and their number one alumni happens to be Nancy Pelosi. The school just recently closed, and it's been surrounded by areas of crime and things like that over the years. But it wasn't like that in its original past. Nancy Pelosi did not step up and do anything to save that school. She has the means, she has the resources. Instead of doing what could be right for other young women out there that need to go to a nice, strong school, she's eating $15 pints of ice cream, and she's living in her world is do as I say, not as I do. Same thing with AOC. They will take care of themselves before they take care of us. So I always tell people, don't trust people in power. You always have a cautious eye to that person. Do it for yourself and let the government and people in power be there to add on to whatever you may need. But live for yourself.
I'll tell you, Tim, this has been an entertaining and a very informative hour. Do you believe it went by that fast?
Quick, yeah.
Okay. And it's but I will tell you this. I've met a good many candidates over the last year since I've been involved in this work. Okay. There are very few with your integrity. There are very few with your honesty, and there are very few that are doing it for the right reasons. Okay. I know that I know after talking with you, you're not doing this to line your pockets. You're not doing this to make for ego. Okay. You can go play guitar on stage to get the ego stuff. Right.
Once the bar's open again.
That's it. But the bottom line is that I'm going to give you the rest of the time, and then we're gonna wrap it up. But I want to thank you on behalf of NRN Plus, NewRightNetwork.com, and a Virtual Town Hall Live for probably one of the most informative hours I've spent in a good long time. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate your time. The rest of the time is yours.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, New Right Network. Thank you. I think Noah was the first question, and all the way to the very end. They're great questions and very important. And I ask people a lot of times, if I'm going to be a representative for you, what issues are important for you? Because really, I am just looking to be a representative for the people of this district. So yeah, I'm not a politician. Like we used to hear President Trump say, I'm not a politician. The reason I got into this was to protect what was going on for my children. And then of course it started to snowball, and people really said, we need somebody like you that has the drive to get in there and do this. So a couple of things I was always afraid of was when people get into power and the abuse of that. So what I have also said is I support term limits, and we know that most of Congress doesn't. But if the president has a term limit, Congress should too as well. I support a 12-year term limit total, whether it's Senate and House combined, something along those lines, as one checks and balance so that people don't get too much power. But also, President Trump donates his salary. What I would like to do, and I've said a few times, is I'm going to donate $50,000 a year to kids with cancer every year when I do this, because it's not about the money or anything except I want to do what's right. And giving back to children with cancer is a very, well, they obviously are the most innocent of us all, and they need to be taken care of. So that's another way that I think these politicians are overpaid, underworked. I would like to lead by example to do that as well. The thing is, I love my town, my city, my district, and I will do what's needed so that future generations can have a better life, can have a great life that I had, growing up in a lower middle class, lifestyle. But I had a great life because my parents and my grandparents, they did what they could for the next generation. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to do it for you. I want to do it with you. And I ask, think about changing something in Maryland so that we can have a better life. If you think things are going great, okay. But if you've had enough, give me a chance. What do you have to lose? If anything, I care. We may disagree on things, but I'll listen. I care, and I will always put our kids first. I thank everybody for your time. You can find me at timfazenbaker.com. We're always looking for volunteers, people to share a message, donate, whatever you could do. I'm here to represent you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. On the bottom of your screen, there's a donate button. If you want to donate to the candidate, press that button. It'll link over. And I want to thank you very much, Tim, for your time. As I said, if we can make this happen, 2020 is ours. This is Frank D'Onofrio for New Right Network and NRN Plus Virtual Town Hall, saying good night, goodbye, and good luck, Tim, on your. And we're going to do this again, okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
For what seems like the first time ever, we've all gone from 60 to 0. Because right now, home is the safest place to be. Which is why AutoTrader is proud to introduce Dealer Home Services. Search, shop, and find local dealers offering touchless delivery to your home. What we do now when the world stands still is what will get us all